spirit is rising, she's rising, she's rising. The spirit is rising, it's rising, it's rising. The spirit is rising, they're rising, they're rising. The spirit is rising, we're rising, we're rising.
What was that about? A healthy dose of cognitive dissonance?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, let's just get into it. Like, coven, friends, family, listeners, like, I'm feeling very fucking fucked up. And part of me was like, what am I gonna say to this coven? Like, like, okay, so we know like we could point in any direction in the world, even in our own homes, and find an atrocity happening, whether it's humanitarian or, environmental. And on Sunday, there was an airstrike that was timed to coincide with an ad in the Super Bowl. And I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say about that. And it's got me so fucked up. So, what do we do? What do I do? What do we do? Okay, so my like list of like try to get rid of that overwhelming pit in my stomach is like make a donation, call or email your representative. I've emailed Justin Trudeau so many times, like, because every time I feel sick, I'm like, do something, like anything. My whole philosophy has always been not nothing. What do you do? Just not nothing. Anything, but not nothing. So make a donation, email your world leaders, get in circle and do rituals, with your coven or with the Missing Witches coven. Like we have been doing personal rituals and prayers and tears and weeping. And then once I do all that, and if I still have the pit, which normally I do, and if you don't understand what I mean by the pit, like lucky you, that feeling in your stomach that's just heavy and sick and scared, one of my girlfriends started calling it the pit. And so that's, like a pit in your stomach. And so I just have adopted that because it feels like you're also like in a hole in the ground. And so after all that, after I've tried magic and I've tried practicality, I turn to my record collection. And again, if you know me, you know that since I'm a kid, this is my safe place. Like my childhood home wasn't the safest place, but like my record collection, my music was where I could go to just like disappear and feel safe. And so that's like why the prescription honestly is like usually music, because that's where I go to be like, okay, look at what humanity can also do. Like look at the destruction and the hate and the greed, but also like Kurt Vonnegut said like music was the only proof he needed of the existence of God, and so I sort of like cling to that. Like this is whatever you believe is sending messages through us that come out in music, and there's something really fucking beautiful about that for me. So I was listening to Backwash. Again, we interviewed Backwash years ago before she won the Polaris Prize, before she was, too big for the likes of us. So congratulations, Backwash. Because Backwash gets me fucking riled up. This is like a black trans woman from Nambia who's like, you're gonna see me for who I am, and I'm not gonna shut up, and I'm gonna be fucking pissed off. And so, I get into Backwash and I get riled up, and even if it doesn't make me feel more peaceful, it makes me feel like I at least have some agency in the world. So there's this one song called Burn Me at the Stake. And it starts, ever since I started rapping, I put a target on my back. I just thought I should be smarter than I am. For every bullet that they shoot, I'll take it harder as I can. I thought, this shit was much harder than I planned. And then backwash raps. Fuck it. I'll tell these bitches burn me at the stake. Fuck it. Like I am this witch and I'm not going to stop being this witch. But what's really, as like a musicologist, the bonus of this backwash track for me is that the sample that Backwash uses in this song comes from Almost Cut My Hair by Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, which is a song about, I mean, back in the 60s, having long hair for a man was like a very rebellious act. Like it hit a lot differently in the 60s than it does now. It was sort of like the visual indicator of rebellion was long hair on a man. And part of that, I think, is because it takes a long time. You have to be committed. You know, you can't grow your hair long in a week. This is something that I'm committed to my freedom, right? And so the lyrics in that are like, almost cut my hair. And then, but I didn't. And I wonder why. I feel like letting my freak flag fry. I feel like letting my freak flag fly. Yes, I feel like I owe it to someone. And that's the bit that really sticks with me. Like, we could say fuck it, but we feel like we owe it to someone, you know? This survivor's guilt that we're all kind of feeling right now is like obviously preferable to actually being in physical danger, you know. I would take my survivor's remorse or guilt over being in that place again, whether it's Sudan or Gaza or Ukraine. Like, I'm not weeping for my survivor's guilt. I don't expect any sympathy. But I imagine that most of you who are listening to this are get what I'm fucking talking about. But I feel like I owe it to someone to keep caring. Does that make sense, Risa? And I don't even know who. You know, I don't have kids. My only sister does not have kids. And sometimes the little devil on my shoulder is like, you got no skin in this game. Fuck it. Burn it at the stake, you know? But I feel like I owe it to someone to not cut my hair, to extend
Yeah.
the metaphor. Does that make sense?
It does. It does make sense. You know, I'm just editing our conversation with the witches featured in the Witch Hunt documentary, and we'll share that soon. But I've been thinking so much about beautiful wise witch Nick Dickinson saying that he begins by calling common cause, calling allegiance with all the innocent flora and fauna. And I really have felt like so rooted in that. Those are the someones, you know? I have to do it for fucking someone. I have to survive for someone. Also, it's funny. I heard this song go by TV or something this week, and it's a really strange sound. It's like old R&B, but with these weird layers of auto tune, and the voice is just singing, "I'm so lonely," and I felt it, you know, I felt that loneliness. For me, somehow that's tied to the pit. It's um how can this be? Like, how can people think this is okay? How can people be celebrating and throwing Super Bowl parties? How do these things exist at the same time? I know the world is vast, but how can this be? I'm so lonely in this world when it feels like no one else feels this. So I went looking, and it's Swamp Dog. And Swamp Dog, okay, in like his 70s, starts playing with autotune, with like Bon Iver, inspired by the Kanye West album that Amy and I used to get together and scream sing for hours on end, which we won't link to because he's a Nazi now. Um, but you know, his creation story. So he's like, he starts making music by the time he's like 12, and he's making music in like 1952. Um, and he's producing all these incredible R&B records. His name is Jerry Williams Jr. He produced and did all kinds of writing and performing on like 50 tracks. But it's at the time when like, especially Black men, Black people were being cut out of their royalties, and his heart was fucking broken. Like he was just devastated to have put in so much work and to have his name left off tracks, to not be getting paid. And then he writes, I became Swamp Dog in 1970 in order to have an alter ego and someone to occupy the body while the search party was out looking for Jerry Williams, who was mentally missing in action due to certain pressures, maltreatments, and failure to get paid royalties on over 50 single records. And in 1970, he makes this strange album, Swamp Dog, that is as Swamp Dog. Um, that is so beautiful and so weird. And the song that I sat on a lot this week is called These Are Not My People. He says, you find yourself naked in the world with no place to hide. You felt the pulse of your God and he had died. Your rebels have got no cause and your tigers have no claws. They promised you the world on a string, but you know they lied. You said you'd be back in a black Cadillac limousine, but I'm inclined to think it's not the kind that you mean. Because when you fall down off your cloud and you're just another face in the crowd, they're going to throw you away like last week's magazine. It's been a gas, but I'm going to have to pass. These are not my people. These are not my people. Yeah.
Swamp Dog. Fuck.
Swamp Dog. I was like, these are not my fucking people either, Swamp Dog. But there's a thing that happens when you hear someone say that makes you feel less alone. Because like if he feels like that, then there are people out there that feel like me.
Maybe Swamp Dog is our people.
I mean, I wouldn't presume, but and then he goes on to find his people, like that record, and then so many more are recorded at Muscle Shoals, and it's with that same incredible group of musicians just supporting each other's weird, supporting each other's work. And he makes like 10 albums, and then yeah, it's like 1920s he starts fucking around with auto-tune, and finally it's like then that first strange Swamp Dog album goes gold, and the one of his records after that is like, I'm just trying to make some more money to buy more auto-tune or something. The whole record is called. But he's in his
Truth
80s,
in advertising.
And he says, I also am like totally entranced by this idea that like I created this alter ego to fill the body that was empty by being brokenhearted. I'm paraphrasing, but I think there's such an interesting way. I mean, it's a kind of magic, right? Like if I am gutted and I am in the pit, then what can I craft and conjure and give her a name and give her garments that fill her with power and let her live somehow while I tend to this other version of me that can't right now because she's so lonely and so brokenhearted by the world. I will also say my other personal prescription this week is my kid pulled this pink fluffy sweater with like really poofy sleeves out of my drawer the other day. I've owned it since I thrifted it like 5 years ago and have never worn it. And she was like, you must wear this immediately. And like, gotta layer it with your red long dress, which was my wedding dress. And so all week I've been wearing, I told her it's my February uniform. It's my Love Witch uniform. And she's obsessed with it. And so am I. And Mark's a little confused, but he's on board. And I really feel like part of me is broken and part of me is numb. And part of me is putting on an armature of fierce fucking love to say, I don't know those people. Those aren't my people. But I am reaching into the universe in my Love Witch uniform to call to all of the innocent flora and fauna and children and insist insist upon our connection to each other, insist upon the liberation of the world, whether we see it in our lifetime or not. I refuse to be left in the pit not believing that it's possible.
Yeah. And this ties back to Backwash too, because if you meet the person behind Backwash, Ashanti is sweet and humble and giggling and can't believe that you're saying nice things about her and just like in a little cotton dress, you know? And then you see Backwash, and Backwash is, fierce and fuck you and courageous and loud. And it's a completely different, you know, persona. And so maybe we can have that as part of our prescription. Like if you can't like if the you part of you can't handle it, maybe we can create a persona that can. Maybe we can be Swamp Dog, we can be Backwash, we can put on a piece of clothing or pieces of clothing that make us feel powerful and try to bring that into both of our personas. And also, I do want to say that we had a little meeting last night where it just ended up being like a group of women reading poetry to each other. And maybe that's not world healing magic, but maybe it is. Like maybe it is. And Risa, you made me think of something that one of our coven mates wrote. Let me just call it up real quick because I didn't mean to read it, but now I am. Um, it's Deb, our good friend Deb, who is such a beautiful soul. Thank you, Deb, for being part of our coven. She wrote the following sentence. The future told me, we live now in a healing you couldn't imagine, but one that grew from your seeds. So maybe what we owe is just to plant seeds. Maybe that's what we owe each other and owe the world, because there is no fucking panacea. And it's the 21st century and we want some like this is going to fix everything and it's one click away from world peace, and there is no panacea. There is no big bold solution. But every forest grows one tree at a time. Every garden grows one seed at a time. And if we can collectively each agree that we're going to plant one seed, then maybe the future, as it said to Deb, will tell us that we're in a healing now that you couldn't imagine. And Deb's right. Like the future that Deb is hearing the voice of is right. I can't imagine. Like part of our new moon circle last week, Risa, you brought this prompt of like, what does peace even look like? What does liberation even feel like? There's the thing about like it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. So like maybe part of our seed planting is to like imagine what peace even fucking would look like so that we have something to focus on and look forward to. Maybe our seeds are just like in the soil germinating, and maybe we won't see them sprout, but that doesn't mean nothing.
Yeah. I mean, it's so hard to imagine, when two places are at war, so much violence, so much accumulating trauma and hatred, and people who have good reason to be angry and rageful and protective. How do you unwind from that? How do you come back? How is ceasefire imagined? How is it possible? And I know there are people who will sit and work and map and craft and stitch that together. But I also know, like, on some of those negotiating teams, there are no women at all. And so I do, like, I don't know. I want to lean into imagining those grandmothers being able to come together to tell the stories of their parents and their grandparents and their kids, the people they've lost, and to cry together and eat each other's food and 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 map a future possible. I mean, it's so hard to fucking imagine, but we can't give up on it.
No. And like you, Coven, your willingness to fly your witch flag is means something to someone, you know? Like I was one of the biggest freaks at my high school, but like I talked to a younger kid who was like, I'd never seen anybody with purple hair. And it really like, and that was kind of my idea was to be this like person who shows you that you don't have to, that you don't have the laws of man are not same as the laws of physics is what I always come back to, like gravity. I can't fight gravity. I can fly in an airplane or whatever, there are ways of getting around it. But like if someone tells you how to cut your hair or to cut your hair and you keep it long, that's like showing the world that, you you can be who you want to be and you can do what you want to do and you don't have to be a world leader, but maybe you can inspire a future world leader. You know what I mean? Anyway, I've been flying my freak flag since I was born, and sometimes it feels heavy. And, like Backwash says, I put a target on my back. I did that by speaking up, by getting in between, a bully and someone who was more vulnerable than me. Um, I don't regret it, but it's exhausting. And sometimes you want to say, fuck it, burn me at the stake. And that's okay too. Take your moment, say, fuck it. But come back from that fuck it moment always. We have to come back from that fuck it moment. We have to, we have to, we have to, we have to, we have to.
Yeah. And
The,
just, it's okay to acknowledge if you've been numb. There's so many screaming voices. We have some of them directed at us in our private DMs when we don't take enough of a stance in one direction or another. I think many people are experiencing that. Um, it's okay to have been numb and to notice when you've been numb and to kind of send some love to that. Like that's protective system response. And to lean into it a little and say thank you for the protection and thank you for the space of that garden wall. And then to nurture the seeds that are within there to move through it, to action. And if you're listening to this and you're not a member of the Missing Witches Coven, that's totally fine. But also, um, it really has become a space where we organize gatherings together, virtual gatherings like weekly, and members are organizing their own weekly meditations, body doubling. We're doing a craftivism, we're cauldron working together, just get together and like, what does your activism look like right now? What does it feel like? Do you have questions? Do you want to just spend the time together researching local groups, actions in your community? Do you want to, you know, coherence check a call to action before you send it out? Do you want some help in Canva to make an image that speaks directly to how you're feeling? Do you want to just be together and feel rage and sorrow and numbness? I really hope that you feel invited, that you may not claim the word witch or feel like you're practicing enough or any of those things. But I just want you to know this whole project, everything we do, we've made the decision to not be ad supported, to truly just be community supported. And that's because that's where we get all of our nourishment and all of our insight. And that community has become just incredibly awesome. And you're very, very welcome there. We really, really want to meet you there.
yeah, we're all a bunch of swamp dogs feeling lonely, but
Lonely.
we have an option, because we have a coven, and a coven is very fucking serious, like it's all casual and whatever, but like having a place where you can unmask and be wrong or ask questions or just weep or again brag, it's been life-saving magic for sure for me, and I think for a lot of people in the coven it has been. So if you're a swamp dog and you're so lonely, you're not alone. I promise you, you're not. But sometimes you have to be the one to reach out, you know. Sometimes it has to be you.
Yeah. If you feel sometimes like these are not my people, maybe you'll find your people with us. Anyway,
Yeah.
I hope you find them.
Yeah. And bless if I can be.
Bless if I can be.
World's drifting through me, and my life is all to me. I love myself and all me. I love myself and all of me, all of me. I love myself and all of me. Love myself and all of me. I love myself and all of me.
If you want to support the Missing Witches project, join the coven. Find out how at missingwitches.com.